It has You Ain't Gonna Believe This, Ronny Dawson, of course, my radio show, TJMorrisET Radio, and it had Mel Tillis listed with 2 or 3 things. So he must have used to do this stand-up comedy. Mel Tillis. You remember him, don't you?
Yeah. I love Mel Tillis' music, yeah.
Yeah, so whenever you Google this, folks, you may see Mel Tillis listed with Ronny Dawson and Teresa J. Morris or TJ Morris ET Radio. Well, I'm going to turn it back over to you. But, Anna, you're welcome to listen. But we're going to do stories just because it helps. It's American culture, folks. It may be around the world, but fire telling stories.
Yeah, you know, the other day I got friended by Calvin Parker. You know, he's the witness in the Pascagoula UFO. Yeah. And I'm like, wow, that's Calvin Parker. They friended me. And here a while back, Stephen Greer friended me on Linked. You know, and Stephen Greer, he's pretty picky about who he lets in his circle. So I thought that was a pretty cool deal. So maybe people are starting to figure out who I am exactly.
Well, good.
And, but, you know, talk about
your radio there, too. You know, it does.
Yeah. You know, I talked about my UFO, my Bigfoot experience there. And let me tell you something that happened years later that just shocked me. Okay, I was hauling crude oil. Okay. I was hauling crude oil, and they'd sent us out of town, and I was I had to go out to Carlsbad, New Mexico, and work for 2 weeks. I mean, when we other areas get behind, they would send drivers out, and we'd have to live out of a motel for a couple of weeks, and it really sucks because you don't know where the oil's at, and you're having to drive around sometimes at night. You're trying to find stuff in the dark, and you don't know where any of the main highways are, much less the back roads that lead to some of these storage tank batteries out in the middle of God knows where. And so I was working out of town out in Carlsbad, and I had to work the night shift. And it's frustrating because you're running around out there in the dark, and this old truck didn't have very many work lights on it. I mean, you had to have a flashlight to see where you're going, and then you got to watch out for snakes and animals and find where you're going and not wreck the truck. And so I'm out there, and I finally got my load of oil coming on. I want to walk around my truck to check the tires, make sure I ain't got a flat, because I've been driving through some wild country. So I start walking around my truck, kicking the tires. Well, I walked around the back of my truck, and there are pitiful lights back there, and the flashlight I had was trying to go dead, so I didn't have much of a flashlight either. So I'm walking around the back of that truck basically in the dark. And I bumped into something big and hairy, and my face hit this hair, and whatever this thing was stopped me dead in my tracks. I mean, I was walking, I was 250 pounds, and whatever it was stopped me dead in my tracks, and I felt this big, coarse hair on my face. Well, you know, I always thought I'd be a good soldier if I ever got recruited or something like that, but what happened to me, this shock scared me so bad that my knees started shaking, and I wanted to run, but I couldn't. So I'm basically wobbling back to my truck shaking because whatever I walked into stopped me dead in my tracks. So whatever it is big. I'm 6 feet tall, and it's bigger than me because it was taller than me, and this hair hit my face, and I just stumbled backwards, and I walked back to the truck is shaking. And I got back in the cab. Once I got back in the cab of the truck, I was mad at myself, going, you know, you big old chicken, you know. You should go back there and see what it was. And so I started looking around there, and I get my lights at work, I change the batteries out, get a brighter light, and I go back out there. I grab my 24-inch pipe wrench, and I'm ready to go do battle with whatever's at the back of my truck. So I go walking back there with this flashlight, and I got this pipe wrench in my head, and I'm thinking, man, there's a Bigfoot back there or something, because I've seen a Bigfoot earlier in my life, you know. So I don't know. And I walk back there, and I turn the back of that truck, and I shine my light on, and it's got the biggest horse I've ever seen. and its butt's sitting right there in the middle of my bumper, and I walk right into the ass of that thing. I walk right into that horse's butt. And it's a miracle that thing didn't kick me. But that coarse hair that I felt was his tail. I walked right into the ass of this big old horse. And I thought, okay, Thank God it wasn't Bigfoot, you know. But it just goes to show, you know, how when I get really scared, when something scares you, my knees go to shaking. And that's the first time that ever happened to me like that. And it's kind of frustrating when you're wanting to run and you're thinking clear, but your legs don't want to work. And that happened to me back in my UFO sighting in March 2nd of 2011. Because when I was sitting there at that tank battery and I was watching them UFO lights, when I finally seen that UFO coming towards that tank battery, and I was going, oh my God, I got to do something. I got to get out of here or something like that. And I went down and hid below the tanks, and everything was working right. And when I looked up and seen the edge of that disc blocking out the stars overhead as it was moving over me, my legs did the same thing it did that night. My legs started this shaking thing where I could barely walk, and people were going, "Why didn't you just run?" I said, "Man, I really wanted to run. I really wanted to run bad, but there wasn't no running. My legs wouldn't. I mean, I could barely pull off a walk." And when I seen that disc, my legs started shaking so bad I couldn't run, and I went over and I hid behind this oil field separator, and this disc was right on top of my head. And I looked around the side of that thing, and this light come up on under this compartment underneath this thing, and it looked like something staring out of this porthole opening window that was suspended from the bottom of this disc. It had this huge white bluish light that just lit up the whole room, except for whatever was standing in the window. And I ducked back in there, and I looked around me, and I seen how dark it was, and I guarantee you that I've never been so scared in my whole life, man. I just had a feeling that something with long, slimy hands was fixing to come running out of that darkness and grab me. And I grabbed my phone, and I thought, you know what, people will never know what happened to me. And I thought, you know, I'm going to try to get a picture of the craft, and then if nothing else, I'll throw the phone if I'm attacked. You know, that'll give my wife and family a clue that something went on down here that just caused my disappearance, because I thought I wasn't going to be here that much longer. And I leaned around the corner of that separator. I didn't even bother trying to get the frame of the camera straight. And I focused it on that compartment with the light on underneath that craft, and I caught the picture. I took one picture of that camera and then put it back in my pocket and just waited for something to grab me. And that picture to this day, you know, I got a video on YouTube. It's called "Man Escapes Alien Abduction with Pictures to Prove It," and it showcases that footage that I took. We zoom in on it to get the best look that I could possibly get. I know it's a poor resolution camera, but I mean, you can see it well enough that you could tell that it's something very odd, not something you're just going to come across out in the middle of the oil field at night. And after taking that picture, the craft backed away, and I never felt so relieved in my whole life that when that craft started backing away. It started backing away from my location, and I thought, my God, thank God. I thought I was going to get taken or something, and they backed away, and that thing backed off out there about 200 yards. All the lights just went out on it, and it's still sitting there. And all of a sudden, I could hear a roar of a jet. Well, this jet, it's like a F-16. I could hear it coming, and it's getting louder and louder. I looked up, I actually seen the craft pass like 100. It had to be like, I don't know, 200 or 300 feet. It looked like above the battery. I mean, you could hear the roar of a jet as it went right over. It went right over that battery. It went right towards that where that UFO had backed, and the lights had went out on it. And I was expecting to see a firefight or a collision. And I felt like, man, here they are. The military done spotted this thing on radar, coming here to save me. I was never so patriotic in my whole life at that point. And I thought, man, they just come in here to save my ass, save the day. And that jet didn't collide, and there wasn't a firefight. And the jet made a big sweeping circle, and that jet headed back in the direction of Dice Air Force Base. And I was like, where are you going, man? You know, at least do a figure eight and keep looking for it or something. Don't give up so easy. You know, and this thing wasn't even out of sight I could still see the lights on the jet when the craft appeared back over the field. Just the craft appeared exactly where the lights had went out on it, exactly where the jet had just passed over. I have no explanation on how it can occupy the same space as the jet. The jet should have seen it. The jet should have run into it, and nothing. The jet just passed right through it or over it or around it, and the jet left. Well, this thing is backing off out there. The lights would go out. The lights would come on. And I took so many pictures with this little camera I was carrying. I had a Motorola Tundra. It was a flip phone. It was back in 2011. It was like a military-grade flip phone. And it was one of the first phones that came out that had a video capabilities as well as camera capabilities. And it was an expensive phone, and that's why I bought it, because I hadn't had much luck carrying cameras because the batteries would go dead when either the UFO drained them or the batteries would just be dead when I needed the camera to take a picture of a UFO. And the camera would work all the time. I could take a picture of anything I saw, but the first time you see a UFO and try to take a picture with it, the batteries are drained, And at one point, the camera opened up, and I still got the camera, and the battery went dead, and the camera extended lens extended all the way open, and then power just went out on that thing, and to this day it still sits like that. I put new batteries in it; it would not work right since. It's like almost like they did something to it to disable it or something. It killed it. It stayed dead too. So I wanted to do something with the cell phone. And the reason that I wanted to use the cell phone is because the battery is better protected. It seems like when you're around a UFO, that extra coating around the batteries or whatever they do to protect people that carry them is enough to keep the UFO from immediately draining it. So I think the cell phones are a great option for catching video footage. And as cell phones are improving and cameras are improving, I expect we will keep catching better footage. And I think some of my footage is some of the most amazing footage that you'll ever see anywhere. And if you want to see it, you can just simply type in Ronny Dawson UFO on Google. And you'll see a lot of the pictures that I've taken with my cell phone of that night. That happened that night, right there on the Google, so you don't have to worry about getting spammed or anything else. And I like the way Google's really helped me out. They put me right there. You type in, there's a rockabilly guitar player named Ronny Dawson, so you have to make sure you don't get on none of his stuff. But you can type in Ronny Dawson, RONNY DAWSON UFO, and you can see right there on Google all the pictures that I've taken will come up right there, and you can just look at it right there on Google Images. And that's the way I like to tell people, just check it out there, because I have so much stuff, because after the jet went away, there was this group of lights that was circling over that location, and they circled around for about 10 minutes, and it seemed like they were spiraling down. And as this thing spiraled down, I started looking at my camera, and I looked at that memory, and I was like, man, I have taken so many pictures of stupid lights out in the darkness because I was just so excited to actually get some UFO pictures. And MUFON had been, telling me, Ronny, you're finding so many UFO reports, but you never had a picture. You never have a picture. So, yeah, I was like under pressure, like, okay, if you're seeing this stuff, you need to prove it. And I really wanted to prove it. And I know people are like me, I want to see some evidence. Show me something. Show me some proof that you saw something, If you're there and you saw it and you have a phone, get a picture of it, But it's harder than you think, because, I've had craft up close and personal, man, like 200 yards away, and I'm getting a good look at rotating lights that are rotating around a disc. And I grabbed I'm like, okay, this is going to be the perfect UFO video. So I grabbed that camera off the dash of my truck and jump out, and I fling this thing open, and I'm ready to hit it. And this thing is almost like you're watching them, but they're watching you back, because, this thing tilted, and it just disappeared. And so it was very difficult to get a picture. So when I finally got the opportunity that night to get some pictures, man, I got so many pictures of stupid lights over the field. Well, I didn't know it was going to get any better. I would have saved some space where I could have caught a few more videos and stuff like that. But these lights, they were spiraling around that location. They were spiraling down, and they were getting to the point they were getting close. And I had the camera ready, and I went around the back side of the truck. I stopped the loading process, and shut everything down so I wouldn't have